I'm finding myself having pretty broad podcast fatigue. And I'm attributing it, it could be a macro bear market symptom. It could be a Spotify platform discovery problem, which is kind of what I think is most likely. But I'm not getting content that is exciting via podcast other than what Bitcoin did. And I'm finding it also within the episodes as well. Like I'm turning episodes off of stuff. I'm getting 15, 20 minutes in and I'm saying like, the next 90 minutes aren't happening. Like I'd rather read a book. I'd rather get back to work. I'd rather like do anything other than consume, somebody else's macro perspective around when inflation's going to have peaked. It just like I can't do it.
Okay, that gives me a couple of questions. Like, firstly, is that a like in life thing? Are you in a different mindset at the moment because it's January? You're like generally just a bit like our industry's been tough and you're just like, there's a lack of patience? Or do you think it's just nobody's giving you something new or interesting?
I think some of it is just like a lot of the weekly shows that I listen to or like the kind of the regular cadence stuff just isn't hitting.
Right.
Like I don't find people have like particularly exciting opinions about the world right now. I feel like, Bitcoin Twitter has been kind of getting to like the like capital R right answer faster than sort of the media digestive tract. And so like I'm getting in 10 tweets what it used to be like a 90-minute podcast. And I just like, I don't have the patience for them to like work through the mental hoops that it feels like Bitcoiners have already been through, 11 days ago on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't actually have the time to listen to that many podcasts. I think it's one of those weird things. When you make a podcast, you don't really listen to a lot. It's like if you fix computers, you don't want to go around and fix someone else's computer. And we're either traveling or I'm back at home working on the club, so I don't have that much time. I think it's pretty well known. My go-to is Joe Rogan, but just because I think his discovery of interesting people. But even with that, I've had some fatigue. But he's had some really good ones recently. He interviewed this bee lady. You ever seen this lady? She's on like TikTok or Instagram. She goes to like houses where they've got a bee infestation, and she'll take down part of the roof, and there's like a whole nest there. And then she explains it, removes it. She's actually in Austin, but like the whole interview is incredible.
Wow.
It was just, I totally didn't expect it. Didn't know what it was going to be about. And I learned something new. Mm-hmm. I think his discovery's been good, but also at the same time, I get the fatigue because I don't want to listen to people who I think might be full of shit. And so, for example, he had that Peter Zahan on.
Yeah.
And I was really excited to listen to that. I'd heard a lot of good things about him. I don't know him that well. And the only thing I see get shared out on Twitter is his opinions on Bitcoin. And he's pretty steadfast in his opinions. It's down to 16,000. It's only got another 17,000 to go. It's going to go negative. It can't be money. Like it's just spitting out the same fun. I'm like, well, if I can't trust you on this, how can I trust you on other stuff? And I'm not sure if I want to listen to you.
So this is forgive me for bringing up the persona non grata in Nassim Taleb, but he has sort of the most brilliant passage on this, which is, think about the thing, and this is for everybody listening, think about the thing that you know best, right? So think, whatever industry that may be. Now think about how your peer group of experts thinks about how the media reports on the thing you know best. It's garbage, right? The people who report on your industry know far less than you do, and so you laugh at sort of their juvenile takes or their juvenile analysis or whatever. We in Bitcoin know this overwhelmingly well. The media is terrible at reporting on Bitcoin, other than a few, shining examples of great quality work.
Should we give anyone a shout out?
Kenzie Siglos.
Yeah.
Crushes.
Yeah.
She crushes.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of others who do really, really outstanding work.
Aaron Van Weerd.
Yeah. Aaron's incredible. Rizzo's incredible.
Yeah.
George Kaludis.
Yes.
Is great. He moderated a panel that I was on, and could not have been more thoughtful and well prepared. Like, there's like, you see some of like the artists who do like really sort of rough impressionist work. And then you see their sketchbook and they're doing like perfect portraits. That's like George in interviewing. He read like 4 books that I mentioned offhand in an interview like 2 years ago. He's like, oh yeah, I read those in preparation for our 25-minute panel. Unbelievably good. CoinDesk, give him a raise.
In fairness, Danny reads 4 books for every interview I do and just gives me the notes. Have you done any audiobooks? Because sometimes when I've got like podcast fatigue, I go to audiobooks.
I was gonna go there with you. I just finished the Leonardo da Vinci biography.
Wow. Okay. It
was awesome. It was the same guy who did the Jobs biography and the Ben Franklin biography, same biographer, Walter Isaacson. And it was just great. Like this is somebody who is truly a polymath, right? So he was equally known at the time that he was working for his military engineering capabilities. He was a naturalist. He was obviously a beyond brilliant artist. But being able to kind of sit at the intersection of sort of apex art creation, apex engineering, and apex, science and biology, let him weave together these skill sets in just ways that I had no appreciation for previously, but walked away from that book, ready to talk about it on a podcast and get excited.
That art documentary, was it The Last Da Vinci or was it The Last Van Gogh?
I've not
There's
seen
a
that.
documentary that I saw recently. I'm sure it's The Last Da Vinci.
It was. So
have you watched that?
I have not, but I know the painting that it's all about, where there was a, on vellum, which is lambskin, there was a cutout from the front illustration page of a book that was given to, I believe it was sort of his patron's daughter. It turns out to be real. But basically there was a multi-year saga of trying to validate if this was actually a Da Vinci illustration or not. And this guy bought it at auction. I mean, the guy who bid on it, he saw it at auction. He said it looked amazing. He thought it was either one of Da Vinci's students or somebody else, who did a really great sort of example of the work. And I think he bid like 18 grand for it. And then somebody else won it for like $23,000. And then 9 years later, he was able to buy it at the same price, the $23,000 price. Thing is worth like $100 million.
Are we definitely talking about the same painting? No, it sold for $500 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, a 450
it's
million.
the Lost Leonardo.
The Lost Leonardo. It sold to the Saudi prince.
Which one? Bin Salman?
Yeah. No. I keep wanting to say SBF because that's the 3 letters.
MBS.
MBS. What was it? SBF. MBS. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he paid $450 million for it, and they still don't know if it's a Da Vinci or not. It's a wild documentary.
So this is crazy. So you're catching me in an area that has been very exciting this week.
You know better than me.
So the way they did authentication for some of these paintings and other sketches is some of them he signed, but he didn't sign all of them. And some of them he left a fingerprint on. And that's like what happened with this one, is that they felt pretty strongly that there was a fingerprint match. And then they were able to find the book that it was cut out of. And that was like why they feel it's much more likely that it is a Da Vinci than not.
But it had to be restored. Can you get the photo of it pre-restoration? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of work had to get done to it. Like an insane amount of work had to get done to it.
Same with The Last Supper. An enormous amount of restoration work has been done because it's on a church wall.
Yeah. Be mad if somebody's paid $450 million for a work of one of his students. There's a book that we do the audio book. Well, some of us, but sometimes me, Jeremy, and Danny discuss books. We all did this book at the end of last year called Hail Mary.
I have it downloaded.
Oh my God.
It's the sci-fi book?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it downloaded. Don't spoil me.
No, I'm not going to spoil it. All I'm going to say is once you've started, you'll be gripped.
Okay.
And it's not what I expected. And it's the most fascinating story.
It's Andy Weir, right? The guy who did The Martian.
Yeah, The Martian,
Okay,
yeah.
I have it downloaded.
It's been commissioned for a film as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's been commissioned for a film. it takes a little bit to get into, and then once it starts going, for me, without giving it away, I don't know what you think, Danny, it didn't go where I expected it, but it went better.
It definitely didn't go where I expected it. I wasn't sure about the ending.
Oh, I love the ending.
Have you guys, I'm changing the topic so you don't spoil me. Have you guys read The Three Body Problem?
No.
No, that's been recommended a few times.
Okay, so
I'm going to get it now.
So if you, what it feels like you're describing, you need to do this as a team and go through The Three Body Problem together. There's 3 books. They're all phenomenal. But this is like, to me, there's like people who've read this book and who've kind of got it and have digested it. And it's such a special.
That's also being made into a TV show by the guys who did Game of Thrones.
Huh. It's free to download on Audible.
All right,
or I bought it previously.
See, this is how we survive bear markets.
Yeah. The one
Sci-fi content.
I've literally just started The Psychology of Totalitarianism, and I just don't know I've got it in me, man.
You know who's a big sci-fi head?
Who?
Is Matt Pines.
He was here like 2 days ago.
Dude, he's the best.
Yeah.
He is the best.
We were discussing because of Zahan being a little bit misdirecting people on Bitcoin, like, and then everyone on Twitter is like, "You need to be Saylor. No, it needs to be Saifedean." Like, I don't think people pick the right people. I don't think he's going to have anyone. But if we did, Danny's controversial choices, Matthew Pines would be great.
He'd be great.
I think he's not going to do an Andreas-style Bitcoin show again. So it needs to have another topic, and then that's the Trojan horse for a Bitcoin conversation.
Yeah, every conversation can end up being a Bitcoin conversation if you have the right Bitcoiner.
Yeah.
Yeah, my personal shout's always been Alex Gladstein.
That would be.
I mean, if it's not me.
You guys should just talk about podcasting.
I think Gladstein would be incredible because there's so many topics he can touch on human rights and
Totally.
I don't. You might have skipped the show of mine, but I made a show recently with him about the IMF and the World Bank. Yeah, and that to me is like a story that I think someone like Rogan would love to get into.
So I'm convinced that the All In podcast guys are listening to your show.
Really?
Or listening to Alex Gladstein because one of their 2023 loser predictions was the IMF. And I'm convinced that they saw Gladstein's piece.
So really interestingly, Chamath's team got in touch about, when was that? Was it about a year ago?
It was a good while ago.
Yeah, a year and a half ago. And wanted some podcasting advice. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, we know your podcast is doing really well. Just want some advice. And the trade-off was Chamath was meant to come on the show. It was before he dropped out of... That was Bitcoin 2022, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so like I want Chamath on the show. I've got important questions for him. I don't agree with him and everything. So anyway.
So I don't find his Bitcoin take remotely interesting. If I were to get 2 hours with Chamath to interview him, I would spend 1 hour and 50 minutes on all of the growth hacking that he did at Facebook.
Yeah.
Because he is a top 0.1% growth hacker and built Facebook's user base up to 1 billion people. Like that's it. That's like the thing that I want the deep dive on. I don't care about the rest of it.
Well, they owe me a fucking interview because the trade-off was like, they wanted to say, what have you done? How have you done it? And Chamath will come on the show. And I was like, great. So I just went through everything I'd done, which isn't rocket science, and then he wasn't available, and, it didn't happen, or we didn't, he wanted to do it remotely, where I only want to do it in person. So it didn't happen. So if anyone on All In Pod is listening, probably not David Sachs, because he's blocked me, but if anyone else is listening, Chamath owes me a fucking show.
And can it please be a show all about his time at Facebook marketing? Because I'm very curious about that part.
We might have to clickbait the title.
This is below your line.
Dude, don't come on now. It's not going to come on. What could we call it? Who is the best host on All In Pod? I actually don't watch it. It's
probably the science guy, Friedberg. He's good.
I don't know him. I mean, I never listen to it because all I ever see is bits on Twitter, and I'm like, it's just not my thing. But I've heard really good things. I was out for a drink with a friend the other night, and she was saying to me, and she's not into VC startups in any way remotely at all, but she said she loves the show.
Yeah, they do a good job. They do a really good job.
Are they touching on like all subjects?
I would say it's probably like a 3 to 4 legged stool of like politics, investing, current events, US politics, global politics, and like supply chain, macro, that kind of stuff as well. It's punchy, right? So you're only getting, 60 to 75 minutes, kind of length. They have, they have strong opinions that I often agree with or disagree with. They don't do a good job of like understanding Bitcoin's role in the world. They're pretty crypto-y for my taste, but I think from like what is the nature of the current public discourse, I think they're a pretty good bellwether for like, affluent American, investor class.
I might check it out. Give it a go. Have a listen. But if you listen, Chamath, David Sachs, who's the other guy?
Friedberg.
No, there's another one.
I don't like him.
Maybe he's the one who blocked me. I think he's the other one. Roy.
Jason.
Yeah. No, Jason. At Jason. Yeah, no, he's the one who blocked me.
Not a fan.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I'll check that out. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I don't think there's a lot of interesting content out at the moment. I'll tell you another reason I don't think there is I think a lot of podcasts have tried to become very current. So they're all discussing the same thing. So an event happens, they all discuss it. We do it sometimes. Like we discuss, we had Ukraine, Russia covered. Mm-hmm. We had SBF covered, which we had to. But like whatever the thing is that everyone's covering.
It's the current thing, right? Like everybody's got to like orient themselves around the current thing. And I think that like we as Bitcoiners are like we're
not the current thing at the moment.
We're allergic to that, right? Like Bitcoin is designed to not be the current thing. It's designed to be boring, stable, and click forward one step at a time.
Come on, man. You want it to be the current thing again.
I'm open to it being the current thing.
Maybe that's what's worked out well for us in that when we travel, because we travel for 6 weeks, make 20 shows, we can't always cover the current thing, what's going on. So we have to make timeless shows if we can, a little bit.
Well, and your show is different because it is always oriented around a guest, right? It's always an interview. It's not, it's not sort of the main cast talking about the next list of topics. It's about, you're bringing somebody on who has a reason to be there. They've got a particular, experience or business or, view on something that you want to hear about. And so I think being sort of an interview first, topic second kind of show is, a buffer against being the current thing.
You know why that is though, don't you?
Because
no one wants to hear my fucking opinion. I literally have people on YouTube all the time saying, can we just remove Pete's bits? Or I skip Pete's bits. We even had one the other day because Daddy's got fans now. It said, like if there's a podcast, there's ads on it. It says podcast starts at 9 minutes and they stamp it. They had Daddy starts at 41 minutes. Brutal.
See, that's the real use for ChatGPT.
There you go.
Removing Pete from the audio.
Exactly.
Daddy's using that for our podcast.
I'm sure.
I think it's going to have a big role this year, honestly. I think it's going to be used in every business.
We could we potentially replace, if we got an audio reader, could we replace the guest? What would Harry Sudock say about podcast fatigue? We wouldn't even need to get you in. We just need to get those tones.
Just send me the script and I'll audiobook it for you.
How you been, man? Did you have a good break?
Yeah, I got COVID Christmas Eve, which sucked.
First time?
Second.
Worse second time?
No, better, much better second time. But just like, older parents and grandparents don't want to get around them. So, my Christmas became a couch and television nap.
That's pretty good.
Which was in retrospect not the worst option.
I quite like the sound of that.
So restful. Like got to recharge the batteries, come back very fresh. And like, I'm a default aggressive kind of person. I like to be very proactive and hit hard. And so I'm really excited to work on Bitcoin stuff this year.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I certainly felt fatigued towards the end of the year. I don't think I was fatigued because of the price so much. It's more the volume of bullshit. And then it seemed it was like more bullshit layered on more bullshit. And we just got hit so many times. And when you keep getting hit so many times, there's other things you have to deal with. So, for example, outside of our this, I have my football club, and there are people who hate us. They've just decided they hate us. We hate you. And so there's one guy specifically who I've blocked him from our Twitter, so he waits for other people to tweet so he can reply to them. He's a fucking idiot. But all he's been doing this year has been retweeting articles of crypto companies or Bitcoin companies failing. He just wants to attack it. And it's that thing, because so many bad things that happen, you almost have to defend Bitcoin to people again. You always have to explain it again. And that fatigues you because you want to be explaining the good stuff. You want to be on the offense, not on the defense. And so I got to the end of the year and I was just like, oh man, this is hard work. I've actually come back into this new year, caught up with Danny and Jeremy, made some shows. I'm feeling optimistic and looking forward like you to getting back into it.
Yes, it's time. Like the Bitcoin's education cycles wait for no one. We as the distributed, users of this software, we go through cycles. Bitcoin doesn't go through cycles. Bitcoin clicks every 10 minutes. And so, the opportunity to use kind of the scarce time in front of us, it's a huge opportunity, but there's also time pressure that I feel all the time, which is that, Bitcoin will not remain niche forever. And so, educating people I care about, getting my own kind of mindset deeply, framed out for myself, like continuing to do kind of that education and re-education work for myself around Bitcoin. I don't have a Nostr set up yet. I need to, right? I haven't gotten to it yet, but like these are things that are developing, sort of in the broader, Bitcoin ecosystem that are exciting and that are new. And that if I don't stay super on top of, like, will pass me by. Like there's like the one that comes to mind especially is like, there was a bunch of people who got really, really good at Lightning routing, right? They were earning fees on routing and they were like doing a bunch of bespoke setups on that. And like, I just, I run a business, like I don't have the time.
Do you want me to show you?
Yeah. Yeah, show me how. Let's open the laptop.
Okay, I was joking. Have you found that the way you explain Bitcoin to people has evolved?
I find that the parts of Bitcoin that require explanation have changed. So like at the beginning, a lot of it was like, what's up with this 21 million thing? Like, what do you mean hard cap? Like, how does that even work? I spend almost no time explaining how 21 million hard cap works anymore. Everybody kind of has digested the fact that like, there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin. How? Not really sure, but we think that this is like a thing that is true. It has become true in the global consciousness of Bitcoin. Now I spend a lot more time talking about proof of work versus proof of stake. I spend a lot more time talking about energy. I spend a lot more time talking about, nodes a little bit, but like more so it's like layer 2, Lightning, transaction throughput, like those ideas feel like they're gathering more of like the question process, sort of with somebody who is maybe financially literate but not Bitcoin literate, or somebody who's technology literate but not Bitcoin literate. It feels like the questions are less of like, what are Bitcoin's like functional underpinnings, and like more sort of unique deep dives into single topics or single questions.
So if I was like one of your buddies who's pre-Bitcoin life, when you're old school buddies, and I phone you up, I'm like, Harry, I think I need to get into this Bitcoin thing, but I know shit about it. Like, tell me about it. What would you say? What is it? What is it, man? Why should I care?
It's a new monetary technology, right? So the same way that like you didn't used to be able to use like Venmo or Cash App or whatever, Bitcoin represents like that level of unlock, but everybody in the world can do it, right? So you don't need a bank account. You don't even need an app store account. Like, it becomes like truly universally accessible money.
Yeah, but why do I need that, man? I can Venmo you. I only Venmo you and my girlfriend or whatever, my mom. Why do I need you?
Yeah, so I think like that's the that's like the rub is like the American perspective on Bitcoin is going to end up being vastly the minority perspective on Bitcoin, which is like Bitcoin is financial insurance, at least at the beginning, or monetary insurance at the beginning, and not like the lifeblood of your household. And so for so many other people around the world who end up using Bitcoin, it becomes household lifeblood, right? It is the way that you function over time. Whereas in America, like the dollar, at least on a year-over-year basis, largely works and is a productive asset for us and is useful. So I think understanding kind of that usefulness in a Bitcoin use case native way is harder for Americans. But conversely, like the arguments around Bitcoin as a financial asset, right? As a way to preserve wealth over time. I think Americans get that a little more clearly, and you see that in some of the demographic breakdowns of who owns Bitcoin.
Yeah, but then I would say to you, Harry, it wouldn't have preserved much over the last year. Are you sure?
Yeah, of course. This is the time preference conversation, which is on any 1 year basis, Bitcoin might look terrible. But if you're willing to look at Bitcoin over a multi-year period of time, that's when it starts to get exciting. If you're able to look at the improvements in development and Lightning and in these other kind of venues of growth, that's when Bitcoin looks more exciting. But on any single year basis, like no doubt it's performed brutally.
Danny, can you look up the price of Bitcoin on the 23rd of November 2017?
Yes.
Because this is
It's going to be higher.
Potentially, well, but there's a reason for that date. Do you know what that date is?
November 23rd, 2017.
What might have happened about just over 5 years ago?
What?
I launched this podcast.
No way.
Yeah. So somebody messaged me the other day and said, when I announced I've launched a new podcast, they're like, what's it about? Why are you launching a new podcast? I was like, well, I just want to talk about some other subjects, do some other things. And he was like, it's because there's nothing to talk about Bitcoin. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, it's failed. It's failed since you launched it. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, the price is down.
November 23rd.
Yeah.
8,200-ish.
It's fucking wrong. He's wrong. When did it go up to 20,000?
December 17th was about the top.
I mean, it's around about then, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have laughed if I launched it December 17th. So we're actually, on the 5-year basis, we're down. No, we're about even. It's a store of value. I think, so the reason I ask about that, how you explain it to people, because I found myself, Harry, talking about more of the why Bitcoin, not what it is. Mm-hmm. I talk about what it isn't, trying to do that separation between Bitcoin, shitcoins, and NFTs. That's an important thing, but it's more the why. Why you need to consider this now. And I've tried a two-pronged approach. Is that this is a potential insurance for you, for your kids over multi-year, like you said, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But also, I tried to explain this to Brandon Quidham and he completely disagreed with me, but I think it's a vote. It's a vote for independence from government. So even if you're not sure about it, and you just want to go and find out a bit, just go and buy some. Go and buy £30, £50, and then you've got some. And then tell somebody else to do that. And then everyone starts to become part of this ecosystem that's saying, okay, we all want a bit. We all want a stake in this separation for government. But it doesn't sell well.
I think I would say that it's bigger than just governments.
Fair.
The way my sort of Bitcoin shit test for the future is like how will I ask myself the question all the time, how do I know we've won? Right? One day we may wake up and we have won. And how do I know like when that day has come? And to me, the day that I know that we've won is when the labor force, the people who work, are able to dictate to their employers, do not pay me in GBP, do not pay me in USD, do not pay me in CAD, pay me in sats. When that I am able to get paid natively into the Bitcoin network, and I'm able to dictate that to my employer, and we broadly are able to dictate to our employers, that's when we know. because we've exited at that point. Because so much of the sort of the yoke of bureaucratic systems revolve around the paycheck ecosystem. My taxes are automatically deducted. My 401k and IRA are automatically contributed to. My insurance is automatically paid for. Oh, I've got these tax deferred dollars that go into my healthcare spending account. You're in this walled garden of your employer, your government, and your healthcare insurance system, at least in America, and sort of that garden of payment rails and tax rails, is designed to kind of keep you in it. And so when people are able to say, I don't want that, I want this, and the employers are facing enough pressure from employees to do this for them, to provide access to them in these sort of, Sats native, Bitcoin native ways, that's when we've won. And there's been enough of a groundswell to have this sort of very low friction switching cost from the previous walled garden ecosystem into an open ecosystem. That, to me, that's the juncture.
So do you think of what the implications of that are? What else has changed?
Mm-hmm. All the time. And the short answer is that it means that Bitcoin probably is dramatically more expensive in purchasing power. It also probably means that the ability to, on an opt-in basis, transact with each other has become drastically more free. And so we see people engaging voluntarily with each other in trade or employment or whatever the case may be. That voluntary transaction, that explicit transaction, that conscious versus unconscious choice will be the predominant way of thinking.
You sound very libertarian right now. That's not a criticism, not a pejorative.
No, I mean I just think that the way, the ways that the frog is getting boiled, it's just even more subtle and nefarious than I think we have an appreciation for.
I agree, but I think more people are becoming aware of this. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more questioning. Now that works both ways. I think a lot of things being questioned that don't need to be, and the questions are weird and stupid. Like a really bad, well, it's maybe not a bad example. I tweeted a little bit about Andrew Tate recently. Mm-hmm. I think he's a fucking idiot, and I think his message to young children is terrible. I know some people love him, right? He has a lot of simps that protect him. He's now been arrested, mm-hmm. Accused of some quite serious crimes, trafficking, coercion, etc. And publicly, some people have been very supportive of him. And strangely, some right-wing Christians, conservative Christians, which doesn't make any sense. But anyway, he's very, to me, he's very much like I don't see very many differences between him and Harvey Weinstein, apart from the fact that he hasn't yet been convicted. The main difference is he's publicly telling people what he's doing. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And people are questioning it, saying, no, it's the Matrix. No, the government want to shut him up. When he got arrested, they're trying to shut him down. Like, I think that's where it's gone too far. It's like, how do your eyes not show you this guy's a fucking idiot?
But he and that whole sort of sphere of interactions are so far downstream from the nature of the problems. The nature of the problems are that we are told on a regular basis, don't believe your lying eyes. Right? The food pyramid's good. Hmm? We've the obesity rates in America, it's not a problem. We're just not accepting our bodies properly. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. It's crazy that what we are told to digest and accept sort of writ large, this argument that, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. The cameras all just shut off and he hung himself and now all the guards are dismissed. But suicide, we are asked to believe these phenomenally disbelievable things and said, don't believe your lying eyes. You're looking, you're seeing, it's happening in front of you. Stop believing it. And so what happens when you enter into a paradigm where the de facto notion is if you do not accept the capital T truth trademark that gets fed to you, you are either a bad person and do not have a role or place in society, and then expect to introduce that paradigm to hundreds of millions of people and not end up with radicalization and weird, strange outcomes on the other end is crazy, right? Like you're adding such a dark and chaotic element to our ability to sense make of where we are. Where are we? What does inflation mean? What happened? Oh, inflation's not real. It's transitory. Well, where's the apology? Where's the apology from the Biden administration, the Federal Reserve Bank, and everybody who tried to feed us the idea that inflation was going to be a transitory idea? Where's the retrospective? Where do we have an honest conversation around data and facts and take the opportunity to learn at a baseline societal level and have a discourse and dialogue around what went wrong and why did we not get it right? What were the inputs that led to that? Or are we just living in a forever, are we the foie gras goose on the wrong end of marketing, right? Where the funnel is jammed into our mouths and information is pushed into the funnel, and anything other than taking it and getting turned into, pate is wrong. Capital W wrong, capital A immoral.
It's incentives though. You just have to follow incentives. There's an inertia to admitting you're wrong. Like a fear.
But we didn't used to.
I mean, look, I can tell you as somebody who has very publicly said some things that down the line you're like, fuck, that was so wrong. That is hard. But the strange thing is when you admit you're wrong, you say, look, I got this wrong. I'm sorry. Like you look at the responses. There's a lot of people who turn around and say, fair play to you for admitting that. Yeah. And they trust you more because of that. Because we're all fallible. Apart from you, we all say stupid things and regret them, or we all hold a bit. Like no one's perfect their whole life. No one goes through their whole life and every opinion they have, which is, subjective, it proves to be right. That never happens. But we have a culture now of dunking on people for being wrong. And people are not willing to make mistakes. And it's a primary issue with politicians is you cannot trust them.
No.
I mean, the other day I was watching, I don't fully understand the Speaker of the House thing. I was watching this video online and it was Matt Gaetz. Mm-hmm. And he was kind of like the hold up to McCarthy. Is it McCarthy?
McCarthy.
Yeah, McCarthy getting through. I mean, I don't know the details. Someone else will. But he was the hold up for him getting the number of votes he needed. And they show a guy go up to him in whatever chamber they're in and whisper in his ear. And it goes kind of white. And then he ends up voting for him that evening. And you're like, what is going on here? Like, what is the horse trading in the background for you and your self-interest that means this? You get the Speaker of the House for the whole country. Like, what is going on? I mean, I don't live here. I just see it. But try and see if you can find that video. Because it's weird.
And again, to me, all of this is downstream of the fact that we have a government body that has that the whole fate of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of households sit on the back of this one person's opinion.
One?
Well, if he's the last holdout vote, it all ends up there, right? If you win 51-49, one person turns that vote.
Is it his opinion or is it his incentives? Like, is something offered to him or something threatened to him? I mean, he doesn't have a uncheckered past.
I think that there's a foundational problem of standards. We have lowered our standards around what we expect of each other, of our elected officials, of our partners, of our community leaders. We just don't hold each other to nearly as high the standards as we perhaps used to. And so, if there's a, I try to stay action oriented here.
Can I interject and just say, I think we do if we disagree with them. And that's a problem. Because if you look at the entire body of government, they're meant to represent every constituent, not just the people who voted for them. They're meant to represent every constituent. But if we become so partisan that we only hold to account the people who we disagree with, we're given a pass to the people we agree with. And there becomes a problem in that. It becomes a problem in that you end up becoming increasingly ever polarized. We don't hold the people
On our team.
yeah, on our
to
team.
account.
And that's the problem, because we give a pass to our team. Or we're basically saying to them, you can lie and say it's transitory because you're on my team. But if the other team did it, I've got a problem with you. Here we go, look. Put the sound on. Oh, yes, the Godfather music.
That shoulder tap.
Yeah.
Oh my
But
God.
look at his face. He looks worried. I mean, what's he said to him? Remember that trafficking of a minor, a cross-border charge?
Yeah.
We got receipts, man. You don't know. I mean, this is why it's bullshit. But like, I think we have to have this more collective holding together. We had a guy in the other day. We did an interview with Vivek. What's his name? Vivek Ramaswamy.
Oh, the COVID guy.
Is he a COVID guy?
What do you mean
Doctor?
by
Is he a
COVID?
doctor?
Oh,
No. He wrote a book called Woking, and
Oh, I'm thinking of a different.
and he's going to polarize some people. And I didn't 100% believe in him, in that we started a conversation talking about the problems of the left versus the right. And he said it shouldn't be a left v right thing. It should be the managerial class and then the civilian class. And that's where the separation is, because the managerial class essentially runs society, and the civilian class essentially accepts everything. So think of it almost like the truckers in Canada versus the politicians. The truckers' right to protest was destroyed. They were demonized. Trudeau has control of government, but they also have control of the media. And he said, the people who are suffering are being co-opted into a team, but really they're constantly being attacked together. I mean, they're the people we're making the poorest through inflation. They're the people we're taking away any civil liberties from. And actually, they should be collective together. Like in the UK at the moment, we have a lot of strikes. We've got the rail strikes. We've got the nurses' strikes. The nurses, it shouldn't matter whether you're left v right. It should be that you have worked your bollocks off through 2 years of COVID. There's been massive inflation, and you haven't been given a pay rise. And even like we made this film about inflation in the UK, there are nurses now, full-time nurses, who are having to go to food banks because their salary doesn't cover their entire costs. That's who we should be bringing together.
The issue, typically, in my observation, is that the mechanisms by which the teams try to recruit out of the, recruit or co-opt out of the, what you're describing as the worker class.
No, he was very specific to say to us, do not say the worker class.
But then he described it as the work class
I
in a different
know,
way.
but it's not the worker class, because you could be the civilian class.
The civilian class.
Yeah, and you could,
It's a better word.
but you could be fabulously wealthy, but you're not co-opted into the managerial class. You might be, I don't know, say you're a farmer who has a number of farms,
Yeah.
but you're still part of the civilian class.
Worth enormous.
Yeah,
But
he's trying to connect.
it's about power.
Yeah, power between companies, media, politicians that control everything. Almost like the World Economic Forum's ability to infiltrate into governments. Now, I'm not saying I agree with all of his things, but you can certainly see the connections.
You can absolutely see the connections. I think that it's the mechanisms of control
Yes.
are ultimately, where the revolution routing around, pick your way out. But I think we're seeing it. We're seeing it. To me, it feels more brazen. It just feels like there's I can never unsee the you're going to own nothing and you'll be happy, right? Do
Do you know the background to that?
No.
So that wasn't actually a World Economic Forum policy. it was a thought piece by an external person, was it? And not to say it wasn't, they didn't publish it and they didn't put it up there.
And my answer is it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The answer is that the idea is, it's the idea that you are the carbon they plan to eliminate.
Yeah.
That's the heart of it, of all of this is that we for the greater good, you need to have less, and we are going to tell you what amount of less you're going to get.
Yeah. And you can see that with especially someone like Holland, what they've done specifically to the farmers. You can, or Sri Lanka, what they've done there. That's why the Gladstein show was so important.
Yes, I totally agree. And this is the limiting belief. Like what so revolts me is that there are groups within the context, that we're talking about, whether it's, the politicians or the media or the WEF or whoever, who believe that they have this limiting belief that the only way that we can survive, whatever that means to them, is if we eliminate X, Y, and Z. And I just don't believe that's true. I don't believe that we need to manage our electricity consumption. I don't believe that we need to do more with less, or we need to not eat beef or whatever the sort of the sacrifice du jour is. I just don't believe it's true, because at the end of the day, humans are prospering in untold ways that 50 or 100 years ago would have been unimaginable. The great gift and maybe eventually great curse, of the internet is that, life is pretty bearable. We don't shit in the woods. We find a way to feed more people on planet Earth than ever before. We have an enormous amount of unused land. We're terrible stewards of the land that we have. We could be doing so much more and doing more efficiently and raising quality of life. Technology is this ultimately deflationary force where, $1 goes a lot further towards a higher quality of life than it used to. And if we just harness these steps forward, we have an opportunity to raise the floor enormously further. And this idea that, we're gonna run out. We're not running out. We're limiting ourselves, and it's a disgusting treatment of humanity. It's a disgusting treatment of the innovation that is available to us with the technologies in front of us. I'll piggyback on your nuclear comment earlier, because I think it's just like ridiculously important that we have the ability to have unbounded access to energy. There is no such thing as scarcity. We're not going to run out. If we had the will to invest in an electric grid that was powered by nuclear reactors on a much broader basis, the cost of energy would fall to de minimis amounts.
Can you get up that chart we had?
On that though, before we get that up, I saw a thing the other day. A bank in Australia are now doing a per transaction carbon footprint on their, to the customer. So with every transaction, you get like a score, or in terms of how much carbon that's emitted, and that's like one step before they put a limit on how much you're allowed to have in a month.
They will take it from you if you let them.
That's the Australian commies. Keep telling Danny he needs to move back to the UK. Come hang out with me in Bedford.
So I think it's this. This is a live grid in the UK.
Yeah. So what I thought was really interesting in this is that I think it's set up wrong. Because I understand what they're doing. We want to move. We want to decarbonize the world as best possible. We don't even have to have an argument over whether you believe it's important or not, but I do. We need to decarbonize the world. So we look here, 19% of the UK energy is coming from fossil fuels, 48.2% from renewables, 17.7% from other sources, and then 15.2% from transfers. So great, 48.2% from renewables, okay? Again, we don't need to have the argument about whether you believe they are actually renewable, but the point is that it's misleading. Do you know what this should be? This should be carbon-free, carbon-emitting, or carbon neutral, carbon positive, whatever the things are, because nuclear should sit alongside solar, wind, and hydroelectric. And
calling gas the same thing as coal is also ridiculous. If I were to take an operating coal, and let's live in carbon accounting land for a moment. If I were to take a coal plant and decommission it and replace it with a combined cycle natural gas plant, I have decarbonized the vast majority of emissions coming out of the coal plant.
So really what we should have them do is graded because this isn't about fossil fuels or renewables. This is about carbon.
It's about emissions or
About
not.
emissions. So it should be because what would happen is nuclear would go to the top.
By a wide margin.
And I think it potentially and I know there's timescales to this, but it might go above solar. It might go above wind. I don't know in terms of the construction cost and energy output, but like I'm sure it can be calculated.
Do you know what biomass is? Let's just like really go to the middle of it.
Because biomass is, I only found it in the last one.
Yeah, biomass is cutting down trees and burning them.
Yeah.
Is being called as carbon free or carbon whatever as nuclear.
Well, it's just other sources.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's meaningless.
It is a propagandized chart, because to call biomass and nuclear in the same category from an emissions perspective is just a laughable farce, right? If you take a tree, you cut it down and you burn it, number one, the tree can no longer take carbon out of the atmosphere. How do trees grow? They consume carbon out of the air, right? So you've now limited the ability for that tree to remove carbon from the air. Then you burn it and you turn it directly back into incredibly emission heavy, incredibly just go start a campfire in your house and see how long the room is livable, right? It's ridiculous.
Okay, anyone listening, please do not do this.
Yeah, obviously don't do that. But
I mean, that is a way a lot of people heat their home in England, though.
It's actually happened.
But
with a chimney.
Yeah.
No. It's actually happened. There was some guy who look it up. The guy who created a bonfire in his front room or something. Somebody actually did it and burnt down his house. Fucking idiot.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
But this is the point, is that if we were going to deal honestly with this type of problem, this global crisis, this climate catastrophe, and we were going to deal with it honestly, there is no such thing as a coherent environmentalist position that is anti-nuclear and pro-climate mitigation. That position doesn't exist in the factual world, right? Yeah. We live in we're gonna take an attempt to live in the objective reality together here, where if you believe that there is a pending climate crisis and you do not believe in nuclear energy technology, you are anti-human. And I no longer know how to relate to you on the merits. Nuclear technology is critical infrastructure for humanity all over the planet. And there is no position that can go the other way on that one.
So Anthony Jarrett, who we had in, the nuclear guy, worked on the subs and the aircraft carriers. He actually did a calculation, and it's deaths per kilowatt hour?
Terawatt hour. Deaths
per terawatt hour. Mm-hmm. So you can actually look at this itself isn't perfect, but anyway, deaths per terawatt hour. It was something on solar. What was it? 0.
I think solar was 0.02 and nuclear was 0.03 or something like that.
Yeah, and then like something like coal was massively high.
It was like 9 or...
Yeah, because our example was, one pit collapse can kill more people than have ever been killed by nuclear. Do you know how many people have been killed by nuclear accidents?
It's got to be less than 1,000.
Yeah. So based on our interview, and we have to double check this, no one died at 3 Mile Island.
Nope.
No one died at Fukushima.
Correct.
Which I thought there was one. Yeah. Well, I thought there was one guy. Chernobyl?
It's like 17 or something.
46.
Yeah.
46, that's it. Now, look, there is a different factor. There is a huge amount of land which is inhabitable around Chernobyl. We have to accept that. And I don't know what the exclusion zone is around Fukushima. That those things do exist as well. They have to be taken into account. If there is a disaster, you can't just say death. And there is a chance, like if Chernobyl had been much worse, the exclusion zone would have been bigger. I accept that. But that was decades ago with old technology run by Soviets. No offense, Soviets, but run by Soviets in an era of different regulations.
Oh, and by the way, at Chernobyl, only one of the reactors melted down. The other 2 continued for 17 more years.
Oh, did they? I didn't even know that.
The other 2 reactings kept producing electricity.
I didn't even know that.
I think they only got decommissioned in like 2017 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they didn't have that kind of like protective seal that all the things are built with now. I've come a long way in nuclear in the last few months, ever since sitting down with Alex Epstein, actually, forcing myself to go down that rabbit hole. I am now firmly in the position that we need to see a proliferation in the development of nuclear reactors and a reduction in the regulation that slows that down.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
50% of the budget for a nuclear project is estimated to be regulatory spend, not construction spend.
Yeah. What I want to know is my potential conspiracy theory is I wonder how much of the work of the environmentalists who are anti-nuclear and anti-green energy is financed by the fossil fuel industry. I wonder if they've gone full zone and said, yeah, well, let's get these guys to do our business for us. Because I don't fucking trust anyone when there's money involved.
At the end of the day, when you look at technology that is obviously positive sum, and I have yet to meet anybody who is willing to read, if someone's willing to read 3 books about the nuclear energy industry, and if I had to recommend 3 books, it would be Shorting the Grid, it would be Energy and Civilization, and The Grid.
I've got 2 more for you because we got a couple yesterday.
One was called Atomic Awakening.
Yeah, Atomic Awakenings. I bought that, and what was the other one? I bought that on Amazon. Give me 1 second. I'm going to tell you. Do you know Atomic Awakening?
I've heard that. I haven't read it yet. I've heard the title.
Okay, let's go and see what I ordered yesterday. Power to Save the World, The Truth About Nuclear Energy. So that's by somebody called Gwyneth Cravens. So apparently she used to be an environmentalist and did the work. And she was like, okay, I'm wrong. And so she's written a book about it.
Phenomenal. And so that, I don't know anybody who's done the work and ended up saying nuclear is still bad. And so we have an obviously positive sum technology, and then we've got prohibitive regulatory environments that has basically said we can't build these.
In fairness, Everett, who was on this morning, he actually said to us, the regulatory environment is changing.
It is.
There was a bipartisan bill that's pro-nuclear. I mean, look, it's coming down to the fact that we have an energy problem, and then suddenly these things melt away.
Well, and let's pick on our favorite friend, which is Gavin Newsom in California.
Yeah.
So Gavin Newsom has been a long-term anti-nuke environmentalist until, I don't know, he decided maybe he's got larger political aspirations, and all of a sudden it's not so important for us to shut down Diablo Canyon. And now maybe we need to give it a little more extended useful life, and maybe we should save the plant. Why? Because it's very hard to run a political campaign in California when there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people suffering from rolling blackouts, which is what happens when you remove firm, low-cost base load from an electric system. And I would criticize a Republican doing the same thing. This is a totally bipartisan issue for me. That I believe that if you are on the team that wants to shut down reactors, I am not on your team.
So if Bitcoin fixes this kind of incentive model, what does it do within the private sector? Because you talked about millions of voluntary interactions, but we know companies can equally be as bad as politicians when money's involved. They can be greedy, they can pollute, they can destroy the environment, they can manipulate markets. We've seen this in the unchecked crypto industry, where any fucking idiot can create a token and they can pump it, make the self-rich and run away. Getting rid of the government doesn't suddenly make everything good. It's how do we make everything more honest?
And I would caveat to say that it's not about getting rid of the government. It's about getting rid of the mechanisms by which the government can pick winners and losers.
Fair.
Right? This is not saying we don't want to have a government. This is saying that it's not reasonable for the government to pick energy providers, technologies on a winners and losers basis.
So what do they do instead?
I mean, I think that there's some maybe this is unpopular in some of the full-blown ANCAP circles, but I think that there are negative externalities, there are pollution, behaviors that companies should be restricted from engaging in. And that making your toxic waste somebody else's problem is wrong, and there needs to be a mechanism by which we keep people from doing that. I don't know that the roads argument is one we need to have at all, but I think that there's some negative externality prevention and public good development opportunities that I think the government is good at working on. And I think that those are phenomenal when the right people are resourced the right way and incentivized the right way to do that. I don't think we should have private courts. I think that the court system functions really well as part of the government. So I think that there's obviously a role to play. This is not a get rid of everything argument, but it's an argument that, should we need $100 million to get through all the regulatory hurdles to start a bank? Should it cost that much? Should it be that onerous? No, I believe that a more competitive environment produces better outcomes for everybody. And so it's really about sort of the pulling of the ladder up behind the existing incumbents, the managerial class, and further entrenching them, that further retrenchment that they seem to be incentivized to participate in. That's the part that's hard for me.
Yeah, I just want more power given to the largest group of people who have the least influence and get most fucked by everything. So, I want a vote to matter.
So you want proof of stake? America run by proof of stake?
No, I want proof of work. I can't figure that analogy out, man. This is like the 20th show we made in 3 days. I need a piece of paper. Okay, so if democracy was proof of work, we love having you on our show. You're kind of my favorite Bitcoin. I'm willing to admit that publicly. We've always wanted to make a show with you, which is everything is good for Bitcoin, because you said that to us before, but we've never actually made it. But 2017 will be remembered for the ICOs, and we will remember, 2013 for Mt. Gox. So like there's different eras, and we've learned for them. And you would say, 2013 kind of made us stronger. Mt. Gox did, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. 2017 made us stronger because it's like these shitcoins don't work. But it's not binary. People have still made shitcoins, and we've still had whatever. But like things happen that make us stronger. When we look back at 2022, it's a lot of crazy shit that's happened, Harry. How do you think we will reflect on this in 5-10 years time, and how did it make us stronger?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me it's very clear.
Yeah.
It's that financial contagion, Bitcoin does not fix financial contagion, right? Like if you and let's be very clear about what happened in 2022. What happened in 2022 is that there were a lot of loans that were made either collateralized by nothing or collateralized by bullshit or full-blown fraud and theft. Right. So and we can step through all the examples as has been done time and time again. But basically, there was a lot of leverage introduced into the system that had no basis for being there, had no sort of laws of physics reason to exist. And what came of that is what comes out of any leverage bubble, which is it pops. A lot of people who thought that they were well collateralized weren't. A lot of people who thought that they had money deposited somewhere realized they didn't, and it's the South Park meme, and it's gone. And so the bubble collapsed faster than anybody was able to salvage liquidity or salvage collateral. And so what we're going to look back on is how these lending practices, this is not a crypto year. This is a financial infrastructure year that we're going to look back on and say, these are lessons, for better or for worse. The banking industry learned these lessons several times and do everything that we as a extended industry got burned for. The traditional banking system does all of these same types of things like pretty well, right? They know how to margin a loan. They know how to handle collateral. They know how to, there's a reason why your brokerage is not also your custodian in a stock market trading venue, for instance, right? So if I have an account at E-Trade doesn't hold the stock certificates. Bank of New York might, or Brown Brothers Harriman might, or another venue might. And so there's a separation between the brokerage and the custodian. I guess we all figured out that that's important this year. And why is that important? So why does Bitcoin fix this? Because Bitcoin removes the need for the custodian altogether. What everybody else who's participating in other versions of crypto assets has learned is that you can self-custody it or you can partition custody. Both of those are better than commingling custody with brokerage. Because if you commingle those things, that's how everything gets fraudulent and disappears. Because that's what's happened whether it's Celsius, 3AC, FTX, pick your bad actor. All of those problems happened because people were allowed to borrow money without guardrails or without reasonable collateral.
If the traditional industries like this in 2008 and many other times, how do we fix this in this industry? Because you can fix it for yourself. You can self-custody. If you've got no counterparty risk when there's a contagion, you still get your Bitcoin. But there is still financial damage done in the purchasing powers hit.
Absolutely.
And therefore, in 4 years' time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, there's multiple ways this won't happen again. There might not be the liquidity in the market to finance these type of businesses, or those who are lending might have better lending practices. Mm-hmm. But what else can be done? Because human greed never goes away. People are always trying to find weird, greedy ways to bring leverage into the system. Is this a natural phenomenon?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a natural phenomenon to the degree that we as individual actors across the whole ecosystem tolerate it, right? Like if yes, there's a price impact, but if you held your Bitcoin on a hardware device, you woke up with exactly as much Bitcoin as you did the day before, BlockFi halted withdrawals or whatever, right? So there's these sort of counterparty related consequences that you have either passively or actively opted into. And so what you as an individual choose to opt into, which is to do business with a venue that does something that you either don't understand or you're exposed to, or, in the case of, and I think this is why the FTX story has been gotten wrong so many times, is that they had a terms of service that they lied about. They defrauded you. They committed a crime. And so why were they able to commit that crime? Number one is they were bad. Number two is that they held collateral for more people than maybe that they'd deserved to give them that collateral. And so it's critically important to understand, if you do not self-custody your asset, who is custodying it and what kind of regulatory framework are they operating within? What does their balance sheet look like? So let's just say I custodied, one share of a company with Fidelity. I'm able to get insight into Fidelity's balance sheet because, they're a regulated entity. Or if I'm looking at a publicly traded company, for instance, like Wells Fargo or JP Morgan, I'm able to look at their balance sheet, which says these are their liabilities. If they go away, what assets do they have to pay me when I sue them for losing my thing? We didn't do that, right? We're letting Google Sheet screenshots replace public company disclosures. And that's the lesson, is and this is, maybe this is cold, but we need to grow up and do business like adults and deal with each other like adults. Yes, we can do the Bitcoin thing where we self-custody and we take possession of our asset, and that's critical and we should do that. But we also need to do business with each other along the way. And accepting inadequate corporate governance or accepting inadequate financial reporting or auditing, we can't tolerate that. And I think that's what got us into this mess with FTX, with 3AC, and with others, is that we let a piece of paper and a Twitter reputation do the talking instead of an audit, and shame on us.
But how do we enforce that?
By not doing business with them if they don't provide it.
Sure, but we're talking about 5 or 6 bad actors cause this entire contagion, primarily.
Yes.
5 or 6 primary. Other people will do business with them. So what I'm getting at is, do you think this is something that gets solved by the industry and an industry set of standards, self-regulation, or do you think it comes from central kind of regulation? And then the reason I bring it up is, I'm pretty well known for not being opposed to regulation. And what happened after the 2008 financial crisis was new regulation, which put stress tests on banks and their ability to survive. And they've largely worked.
Yeah, I think that it's not about being pro or anti for me. Yeah. It's just about being a realist. And I think what we end up seeing is an all of the above.
Yeah.
Frankly. I think different jurisdictions are going to take different postures and introduce different rules. like it or dislike it, it's about dealing with the reality in front of us and continuing to, number one, work on Bitcoin and make Bitcoin more useful. And then number two, build exciting businesses with the time and attention that we have, right? We've got an industry full of incredibly smart and dedicated and principled people building exciting businesses, whether it's on Bitcoin base chain or Lightning or something else, continuing to use new products and stay open and excited about what this technology can do. To me, I try to really, really aggressively like check myself and remind myself that, imagine if this was, internet and right now it was 1994, right? What would I say to myself if I was
buy
able
more
to,
internet?
Exactly. Buy more of it, but also use more of it, right? Like nobody had built all of these sort of these internet enabled businesses yet. And so the best was going to come, Facebook wasn't going to be founded for another 10 years. Google didn't exist yet. Amazon had barely just gotten started. These were the most important companies in the world had not been started.
It's crazy, really.
And so like, check your time preference privilege, bro.
I always look back at Instagram selling for $1 billion and think, Jesus. I remember the time when WhatsApp sold for 19 billion. I was like, wow, you guys have done well. But the guys at Instagram who sold for $1 billion. I mean, didn't the Google guys have a meeting with Yahoo and they offered them $1 million for their original technology?
I think so. Well, and then Snapchat got offered and turned it down.
Yeah, it's madness.
By Facebook as well. Speak of podcast fatigue.
Yeah.
Do you listen? I have a podcast recommendation for you.
Okay.
Do you listen to Acquired?
No, I'll check it out.
Bro.
Hold on. Did they just change their name or something? No. I think there's maybe a company that's become called Acquired. I'm sure I saw something on Twitter.
That's possible. Yeah. These and they're shitcoiners to be fair, but they're also awesome business historians, and they do like 2 to 3 to 4 hour deep dives. I think they do like one episode a month on a different company, and they do a really good history of a bunch of the companies that we just mentioned. I would
definitely go and check that out. Okay, before we close out, a couple of topics in terms of mining. Looking forward. What do you want to look forward to this year? Because it's been a rough time for miners. I think, obviously, it cut deeper than a lot expected. We've seen some massive companies in huge amounts of trouble, some refinance. That goes back into that whole fucking contagion, though. Like people using ASICs as collateral without that consideration. When the price drops, the ASIC value drops, which is obviously an issue. But what are the reasons to be optimistic about mining?
The more time that I spend kind of looking forward right now on mining, Bitcoin's going to do what it's going to do. I think the machine efficiencies kind of are what they are right now. I don't think we're going to get way more efficient from here. Mm-hmm. How can we creatively integrate into electric systems? So being able to discover a second revenue stream for miners, which is playing unique roles within energy systems. Riot does a good job of this. A bunch of the mining companies are thinking about this.
We saw that Hive thing today. Yep. 194 Bitcoin, was it? 184 Bitcoin in value from shutting down?
Exactly. So being able to play these unique roles within energy systems is something that Bitcoin miners are uniquely positioned to do. So continuing to spend time thinking about what role a mining company can play when it relates to grid stability, when it relates to average price, when it relates to all of these different kind of core energy functions. Introducing a mining company to that ecosystem is incredibly positive sum, is what we've seen. And so looking at new creative use cases for that, what Jack and Stillmark invested in Africa around these stranded hydro mines, gridless compute. Thank you. Stuff like that. I think that's all tremendously exciting, and I think that as time goes on, those types of unlocks and secondary revenue streams, in addition to the block reward and subsidy, or the transaction fee and block subsidy, like that's what gets me really fired up. And I think that matters regardless of bear market, bull market, whatever. Like that's important to work on in every market cycle.
What else are you looking forward to this year? Give me a zinger to end with.
What am I looking forward to this year? I'm looking forward to Bitcoin being boring. Frankly, I think that we talked about it at the beginning. How do you explain to someone new what's your Bitcoin kind of elevator pitch? And the good news is I have to spend less time explaining what Bitcoin is. And so, the sort of household nature of Bitcoin, it's getting from, 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100. We're somewhere across that cycle now where maybe not everybody who needs Bitcoin is owning Bitcoin and using Bitcoin, but they've heard of it and they know about it. And some of that value proposition is becoming part of the mainstream consciousness. And so what that means is that I can spend less time telling people what Bitcoin is and spend more time telling them what Bitcoin does.
Brilliant. Harry, I love you, man.
I love you too.
I'm not sure we're going to see you next, but whenever it is, I look forward to it. And thank you for doing this. You are my favorite Bitcoiner. I love hanging out with you.
You're too kind.
Keep doing your thing. And yeah, I'm sure we'll hang out sometime this year. Might be Miami.
We're going to hang out more. We're going to hang out a lot this year is my prediction.
Okay. Cool, man. Send people to Griid. Where do we send them?
You can follow us at GRIID on Twitter or GRIID.com, but just follow me mostly. Harry_Sudock on Twitter, and that's where I spend my time.
How do you pronounce your surname?
Sudock.
I've always pronounced it Sudock.
Me too.
And you could also pronounce it lots of different ways.
Yeah.
I get all kinds, and I'm not in the
Where's it from?
My grandparents are from like Poland, Ukraine.
Huh. Okay. Oh, by the way, have you been doing more on Twitter? Because that was one of your things we spoke about.
I've been doing more on Twitter.
How's that go?
You plant seeds in the bear market.
All right, man. All right. Thank you. We will see you soon.
Yes, sir.